Wow, meeting 33.
I think so, Shane. Hi.
Right? That's incredible.
And finally, we managed to go to Zoom.
Yeah.
It only took like how long is that? 64 weeks.
Yeah, as you know, I have problems with my infrastructure in Zoom, so I cannot install the Zoom client, and
Of course.
due to that, I have often problems with the audio connection and the video connection via browser. So what I did now is to reboot the entire machine in order to be sure that I have at least enough RAM available, and I hope that at least the bandwidth will be okay. I disabled all the other nice tools like Outlook and Teams and so on. So
Hello, good morning.
hello, Marcel.
Oh, good morning.
Morning. As usual, we wait for two more minutes before we start. So I think we can start. Welcome to our usual Wednesday meeting of the OpenChain Reference Tooling Working Group. Today we have on the agenda the 3 items as usual, but before we go to the agenda, I want to say that this meeting is recorded per default, so if you have any objections, please say it. But I do not know how to disable the recording, but at least we have Shane in with the meeting, so perhaps he can disable it. But as usual,
Yes.
we
And
okay.
just so you know, the recording is private, So even if it does record, you can always just send a note saying, don't release this.
Okay, cool. Great. Then the agenda is news. Then, as Marcel suggested, open source management for own product development from source to product and FOSS bundle compliance. I think that's very interesting. And then all other business. The news, I have to admit, I do not have that much news because I was heavily loaded in the last couple of weeks. The only news I have or I can share with you from my side is we are not yet finished with the capability model. You know, we had in the end of March, we had a afternoon workshop, which was about 4 hours or something. Yeah, 4 hours. And we talked about the capability model, a contribution done by Jan Tilscher and Peter Elsieten in order to harmonize the capability model with the descriptions and definitions we had of in regard to the building blocks of the toolchain. It was a quite good workshop, but 4 hours were not enough. So we still have, I think, 3 items to discuss. But before doing that, I want to get more clarity on the entire result of the discussion, but I did not have yet the chance to think about in more detail on that. Are there any news you want to share? No, obviously not. Then, Marcel, it's your time.
Yes.
For the
Yeah, I will try to share my screen, but I didn't really prepare much because I would be rather interested in the discussion. I can only
Okay.
share my observations primarily from the last weeks, and would like to discuss this with you. What would be the best way to proceed at that point? So 1 second. I click this share screen. If this works, share screen. This is potentially this one. So now you should see a screen, and now you should see in a second a slide. So now you should see my screen, right?
I don't see anything.
Me too.
Okay. Strange.
Did you share
I
the whole
have
desktop?
I have to click another. Okay, sorry. Now it should share.
Yeah,
you
sure.
are screen sharing. Okay, perfect. So this is one slide that I already had in my first time presentation because I had this this observation already for some longer time over the last years since we are in the tooling group, but I didn't have solution. But I thought, okay, it's 2 different use cases. And now what I observe, and I will tell you later a little bit about my observations over the last weeks, is that now it's getting more pressing because as you know, potentially know me, I'm rather the process guy and not the tooling guy who develops tools. But rather, yeah, try to integrate all this in the processes. So what is this slide? What do I see here? So we have, in my point of view, 2 big setups. Either you have the setup, and that's I'm really very familiar with on the right side, and this is how we currently use it here internally in our company, so that we have a central pipeline, a central service, yeah, and we have a lot of teams using that service, that we yeah, either they have their automated builds that integrate our tooling, or we have a central pipeline that yeah, reviews their repositories. So there's a technical user that gets the sources, then processes our pipeline, and then creates the results. And in this process with those different pipelines, nevertheless, we have one central metadata database. So as we are in this comfortable position that we have this central service, yeah, with the central service, we also have a central database. And here I put the picture from Software 360. So what, as you know us, we also were there from the beginning about the idea, okay, now as I know from the processing of all those contents, those software repositories, now in this pipeline, we know, okay, which team uses which bomb, yeah, automatically. And as we have CI/CD, also if there are updates, we always then have the newest bomb, and we also can store that in the repository. Then you could enrich this information with additional metadata like security, well, quality data, whatever. For us, primarily as the open source office, evidently the license metadata and all this stuff, but you would have much more possibilities also. Once you know, okay, you identify the component, you have the database, then you can use this comfortable situation to get more information on this. And this is also currently we are on the way also not to limit this to open source only, but use it really for the complete bomb management, also for commercial contents and so on. So this is our current setup. And now we see, because we also do a lot of advertising community management here, also in this group, so that, and this is what I really appreciate, that we have this community where we can talk openly and also reach out to others. And it seems to us now that we have a lot of adopters, either already or coming up, that use the same approach. So this is status and observation one. Then the other thing, what I observed in the past and still observe in some cases or some discussions that I have, that we have also adopters that do not have a homogeneous central pipeline, but they have different setups where they have, okay, potentially team number one is internally where they could use such a pipeline, but perhaps they also have another team in another company, a supplier, things like that. So they are not in control for their pipeline, or potentially they use open source tooling, they use vendor tooling, whatever. Each of those teams uses different setup, and this therefore is the need to have a central hub, then not in the way we use it, because our central hub is integrated anyway, but here you would need this interface and ask each of those teams, please provide your data so that we can centrally organize this and coordinate this, to have the same convenience then later on to have one single inventory of data where I can do the mapping and enrich it and so on. And this is a different setup. And here I would say, and this was my conclusion in the past, okay, if I have such a setup on the left side, so I think the priority to have something like Software 360 is much higher. Yeah, so because I cannot know, okay, where I get the data from, I think also the priority is then that we have a standardized interface, yeah, so that we can exchange the data. But here I would say here the primary prior is on Software 360, whereas here the priority for the database is not that high, because we have then our central system. We include all those teams like this, and if this central metadata database is software C60 or not, or something else, it was not, yeah, that high priority. And now if I see what's happening, yeah, and therefore I took here at the next slide the picture I really like from from the OpenChain material. If I look at this, if I have, and therefore I added also this in my mail. So if you are, for example, a vendor that uses different products in a system, then and create a product of products. Oops, sorry, this was not intended. Okay, directly. Sorry.
Sorry, Marcel, can I just ask a question?
Yes.
Hi, sorry, in the previous slide, are you able to sort of say what you actually use, whether it is your proprietary central system? Is that proprietary or is that something, a commercial tool?
This is the open source review toolkit that we have in the core.
Okay.
Sorry, my PowerPoint just stopped working, so I have to start it again. But yeah, so the idea here was, 1 second. I hope I saved it. No. Okay. Then I just will open the other one from the FOSDEM again. And my computer is very old, so please be patient. Ah, no, here it is. Okay, perfect. I saved it. So this is the one I like from the OpenChain material. So if now we think a little bit bigger in the future, and this is why I need this discussion here in this community. How would a future setup look like in such a case? Yeah, so if we would be successful with, and I guess so, yeah, as a community, and push this open chain reference tooling, so that one day, hopefully, each software supplier would use a reference tooling in one way or the other. Might be different implementations, but it's the same, yeah, idea behind, because of this reference. Then how would such chains then look like? And the point number one is what we observed is, so if in case, and that's now, thank you for this question, Sami, if we say, okay, we are using as one link in this chain, we are using open source review toolkit, for example, yeah. So we get something from our supplier. We ask them for SPDX input, then we run our scan and create our FOSS compliance bundle. That we will then forward to our customer, who runs also the open source review toolkit, you get picture, and creates the same thing, and so on and so on and so on. So if we have really such a chain, then we run the open source review toolkit several times. You know what I mean? And then the question is this necessary? Point number one. And the second question, so this was from the process point of view, if we have may have enough trust in someone, that we can say, okay, especially internally, okay, we trust you that you click the button correctly in the reference tooling, and then we trust on the FOSS compliance bundle that you provided, and potentially make some spot checks or something, and then can really save the time, or if we have to redo this again and again anyway. So that would be the process part of this question. The other question would be then from the technical side, because if we if we go back to this picture, one second, go back. Now we're on the our next decision in the ORT community would be, okay, how do we handle this connection to the central hub? And so also for software 360 maintenance and all this metadata. So where there's a big decision, is this the right way to integrate those two, and in what way? And therefore I would like also to start this discussion here in our tooling group, because I think we are there for. Also the fossology is so there's fossology ORTs of the C60 setup, and it's from my non-technical point of view, I see there's some need to talk. So my impression is that the question, if we can reset perhaps the whole stuff, because I really like the idea of software C60, so we support that from the beginning. But the question is if this is the right technology behind, and before we do decisions, I think we should talk about this and what are the potential ways, alternatives that we have, especially as Oliver always says, we do not have that many developers, so we also need to be careful. We cannot afford to have several different potentially competing approaches in parallel, because we're currently still searching for developers to maintain the current setup. So I think we need to talk about this, and therefore I ask for this slot.
So Marcel, thank you very much. That's really very informative. I think one of the biggest challenges, certainly within ARM, we develop very different products. We have about 6 or 7 different product groups that have very differing flows. So while yes, the ideal scenario is that you want a single sort of the one on the right, if you like, to maintain a single repository. In practice, I'm struggling within ARM to reach that consensus. And I have to say, logistically, there are some reasons where our engineering community or developer community are pushing back and saying, no, this doesn't work for us. So I think we have to be realistic and accept that probably it would be a hybrid of the two, but minimize, rather than having 10 different flows, try and sort of be more realistic and say, okay, you'll be about 3 of these, and then or 4 of these flows that then get reported into a centralized area. That's certainly something I have observed. I mean, even something as simple as the scanning tools, for example. I am struggling to get the general consensus from my engineering community. Some want to use the commercial tools, some want to use sort of open source tools. Very difficult, and they have valid reasons. I mean, one of the things that, for example, with the scanning tools, people tell me, well, we really do need to run security vulnerabilities. I'm not going to run 2 different tools and get engineers to spend the time and effort using 2 different tools to sort of do the security and the compliance work. I would rather have a single tool to do that.
Yeah, I agree, and also I have also this observation that you mentioned, but also surprisingly, people that start with the left side approach, where they say, okay, we want to do our own stuff. More and more people come to the conclusion that they also jump on that train on the right side, because it's just much more comfortable for them. But this is a big but here. At the moment, and this is also in my point of view, the decision that we have to take now with ORT is here. This is a standard workflow. So if I want to put something in the database, well, I have to provide my source code, and then I run the pipeline, and then it's automatically ingested in this database. And if I merely have, for example, a bill of material from the supplier, here for the software 360, you open UI and push import and done, yeah, and then it's imported. So this is from the handling much easier than always run the whole pipeline again and again. So so this is exactly the question. If we open here now a UI also to enter something in the database and to manage this, or if we exactly this hybrid model. And as you get my challenge at the moment.
Yeah.
So what do I say?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I see that, and I think it is necessary to have that sort of open up that the API. I mean, the biggest selling point when I talked to our engineering community about, well, using a centralized saves you. If you obviously in your team 3 you want to use repo 2 and 3, you don't have to repeat the work. That's the biggest advantage, because they don't have to repeat what team 2 have done with repo 2. And that's very often the case. That reusability becomes a good selling point, which then pushes you to the right-hand side, that you know, rather than replicating or repeating the same work, once you've done it once, you have all that information there, and then you can reuse it to your heart's content. You know, you don't have to worry about that. But I think I would see this as it's not going to be a single step. I think it is going to be starting from the left, and then having a hybrid model that takes us closer to the right, and then a sort of an aspiration to have it completely as you have it on the right hand side. So to stage it, to be able to you know, to reach the goal of having something like what you have on the right hand side.
May I ask also a question, Marcel?
Yes.
I'm not quite sure whether I got it the right way. So on the left hand side, the picture with team 1, 2, and 3. So is this that they are using a different development environment? So team 1 uses a different development environment than team 2, and both are not using the central, let's say, supported pipeline setup, or yeah, this okay. Now I got it. So we have the same situation within our company. You know, there are tons of different development environments installed in our company, and of course we have also a central service which is supported, but there are teams that do not use this central service because of historical reasons and other reasons. And what we have in regard to software 360, you know, there is the REST API, and we have or not we, but others who are using software 360 within our organization have written several clients to interact with software 360 via the REST API. So I know there's a Python client, and there are other clients written in other languages. And they have then integrated these clients in their build pipeline in order to feed data into software 360 automatically, and of course to check whether there are components already available or not available. So that's the setup what we have within our company. So we are more on the we are also, let's say, in a hybrid situation. So we have the left-hand side and the right-hand side. But the teams are then it's in their, how should I say, in their responsibility how they want to interact with the central hub. So they can use it the old-fashioned way, going via the GUI. But if they want to have a real nice CI/CD pipeline and also adhering to the processes which are required, they need more or less a client which interacts then via the REST API with Software 360.
Mm. And the point for me here is then exactly because I also observe this hybrid model, that if we now yeah, move with the left side to the right, and in the same time from the right side to the left, yeah, to open up this way, so then we currently would develop two competing systems in the same time, and so that would be my current gut feeling, and I would like, well, at least if we do so, to make that transparent, and ideally use as much synergies as we can. Yeah, or we say no, let's reset the whole thing, and say, okay, what would be, looking to the future, the ideal way to do so. And therefore, in the afternoon session, I also know that some other companies would like to join in this in the discussion, because there's things going on at the moment in all over the companies, and I think we have a good opportunity to join forces here again in this bigger picture, you know, not because at the moment, yeah, we were talking about those single tools, but now I think it would be time to talk about the big picture, and how to set our coins on the different things, and also I think this is no secret that, yeah, the software C60 is hard to maintain at the moment, and also to set up. So this is also the feedback that we got in the last years. So there needs a huge investment, I think, if we say, okay, let's stay with software C60 technology at the moment, because I like the idea. So the concept, I say we need also in future. It's also the question if we refactor the stack below, yeah, or if we set up the same idea, the same concept, but with based on the right side directly with this in mind, because even if you have a central pipeline, you can also use it. You can also use in the right side. Yeah, having 3 central or 3 decentral pipelines, and then having this hub or the other way around. So we have, although I would say that's a positive thing. Yeah, we have all the alternatives, all options are open. But yeah, this is also the negative thing. If you have limited resources, so we should not go in all directions, but we should come to a conclusion what's the best for everyone, and where do we have the best support from all the community.
Yeah, I understand.
So it's Steve here. So did I hear you right when you said at the beginning that you're asking for SPDX from your suppliers?
That would be the overall goal, yeah.
Oh, it's the overall goal, but you're not doing it yet. Okay, because it seems to me that if you're getting SPDX from suppliers, then that implicitly means you have the left side model just across all the supply chain. So you're going to be dealing with the same situation anyway, unless your entire supply chain is homogeneous.
Yes. Okay. Yes, and the other thing is because if you have suppliers that say, okay, but how shall we do this? And this was the initial idea of our tooling group, to provide that open source so that no one has an excuse, oh, this is vendor is too expensive. No, everything is available open source. So just go there, pick it, implement it, and then we know if you use Ort or Fossology, whatever. Yeah, these are freely available tools. So you would be able to yeah, do it the same way we do and how we
Mhm.
expect, and we have a clear interface. And this brings me to the next slide where I said, okay, then we should also think about, okay, running, and this, I think, Shane, this was the initial idea, yeah, of OpenChain, to have trust all through the chain, so that we could really make that visible now, also in the tooling, that, okay, here I run ORD or Fossology, I can do this information, and here I run it again, here I run it again, and all, then I ran through those reviews 3 times and got the same result, at least from the facts side, yeah. How those different companies potentially interpret those results. This is another story, but at least from the fact side or mere facts, I would expect that if I run it here and here and here, that we come to the same conclusion. Yeah.
Okay,
And
fair
then
enough.
that makes then the next question, okay, what is the benefit if I run that 3 times? If I can have, for example, a central hub where we share information and things like that.
Just one comment, actually. Well,
So these are the big questions. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to comment in the next slide, in your next slide, Marcel. Sort of the software supplier. Actually, what we find, certainly within ARM, in a lot of cases, there isn't a software supplier. People go and grab the open source packages that they need directly. So you know, you can't rely on the supplier providing that. So it's projects that I think will be a long time before we see the OSS information provided. So you then take it and run the scans and so on, and provide that open source information yourself directly.
Yes, yeah, that's still a education issue, right? to educate the whole supply chain to
Exactly.
do it correctly. And for companies, I think we have some lever with our contracts with the suppliers. But as if the supplier is an open source project, yeah,
Correct.
then we need to become active our own and contribute back and so on. But this would be, therefore I said, this would be the big picture for me. In an ideal world, I would have the left-hand side where each software supplier provides this in a transparent way with the best tooling available, and I have exactly this situation. Rather, you know, we also observe rather the right side of this picture at the moment, and there, yeah, I think the trust is still very low at the moment. Yeah, so that I guess a lot of people would run the scan anyway to be on the safe side. But this is if you have different companies, but we also have internal supply chains here within our company. We said, okay, and within the company, it's really the question, okay, my fellow department already did this scan, so can I reuse this? So this is also one use case we have.
Yeah.
Yep.
About, did you ever think about an idea, something like kind of certification thing that someone did his job correctly, so that we have someone where you can actually say, okay, this is my documentation, this is my binary, make a check whether you come to the same results as I do, and that someone is ticking this, and then this can be kind of like you have the certificates that you use for SSL and other things, that you then can have this artifact being correctly documented. Do you ever think about something like that?
Indirectly, internally, we have something like this with the quality gates. If you really check, okay, did you do this with the right tooling? Did the people that use those tools have the correct education and so on? So indirectly, yes, but not like with a badge or a certificate yet. I think there it's still too early. But what we try to do is also to automate as much as possible. So this is rather the trigger that we have to make this hygiene topic for as easy as possible, to remove the burden from from the development so that they can concentrate on their adding value and not caring about this stuff. So therefore we invest also that much in tooling and in automation. And but a fool with a tool is still a fool. So therefore for us also the education, the training, the curriculum is very important. So those two sides. And concerning the tooling, this is exactly what I observe. So that we have those different approaches now. And if software supplier one, even if it's internal, uses a different tooling than the second department, that might happen. So we cannot force them. So therefore, I think we already made a huge step here in this community to standardize those interfaces, so that we have also now these SPDX activities running also in direction with ISO, so that we can say, okay, we will not accept your delivery if we do not provide the correct SPDX. And then now people asking, okay, can we add also this information to the SPX and that and that and that? So blowing up this stuff potentially, but I think this goes in the right direction, and then I was already thinking a step forward and say, okay, if we have this and this, and we're using all the same reference tooling, I would not say always the same implementation, but the same reference. So what would I expect if I run the same thing again? Except potentially the interpretation that might be different. But and this brought me then to the point to say, okay, but if I would have then two different metadatabases, so that might bring an additional burden to us now in the tooling side, because then you have always this trouble in migrating data, transferring data, things like that. So that and this is a decision that I see now on the right side and potentially also on the left side. Now people asking, okay, could we use the ORD analyzer and integrate it in Fossology? On the other hand, okay, how could we integrate Software 360 in ORD? So that I say, okay, why don't we just sit together and talk about a big picture and find the best setup for the future?
Marcel,
this is the discussion I wanted to start.
Marcel, I would have two comments. So first
Yes.
of all, I think Dirk wants to say something. At least he has raised his hand.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I wasn't sure. My hand has been up for 20 minutes or so. I rebooted my machine in the meantime because I wasn't sure whether the microphone wasn't working or anything. So 20 minutes ago, Holger Streidel was next in line, so I hope you got his question in the meantime. Okay, so we are on the right slide. The left situation, the decentralized one, is the one I usually find in consulting. And the official argument is always, we are so diverse, every team needs its own pipeline and its own setup. But the underlying argument, or the reason, in my opinion, is usually that the OSPO just doesn't have staffing enough to scale up and centralize or help centralize things. So they're really just happy to push things out. I think that's a problem, and the next step is indeed to go to the right side. So I wanted to ask about what effective reasons you have found to make people centralized. And the one I'm trying right now to ask specifically about your opinion on that, whether I'll be successful with that, is really build security. So you can use SolarWinds to argue that you really need to have a more centralized and more tightly controlled build process. It's also nice to ask for scaling up the OSPO. And that's why you want a more centralized pipeline, because then you have less variation that you don't want, and you may have less problems down the road. So general question, how do you get people to move from the left to the right, at least for the time being, before it goes the other way again? And then specifically reproducible builds, verifiable builds, is that a key argument?
If I can comment on that, Dirk, the only way how you achieve the teams went from the left to the right-hand side is convenience. So convenience for the developers. Otherwise, you will not have a chance to to establish a central pipeline within your company, which will be used company-wide. That's at least my observation over the last years. So if the developer has more convenience using the central pipeline, so he gets X, Y, Z for free and can automate more and more, then the teams will switch. Otherwise, they will not switch.
Yeah, and you could have a lever as a OSPO. That's what I did now in the last years. That I said, okay, you may go the left way, but if you have your own dedicated open source management concept, then you also have to document it the same way than we do it for the central side. And you need an approval, and you need to fulfill our central requirements. And then sometimes the teams say, okay, so then I have to invest in creating such a concept. That's also additional burden. Or I invest my time in onboarding on the central pipeline. And then if this is more or less equal, or even the onboarding is less effort, then you also can have a lever. The problem in the past I saw is that we didn't have this requirement for the teams, so that they also had to document that, and that we check this. So there was not this this total cost of ownership picture, to be honest. So they say, oh yeah, as we are on the left side and we have less effort just because we didn't do the documentation, full stop. And then therefore they said, and this onboarding would be additional burden. And now with all those trainings and this transparency, we can say, no, it's not additional. It's even less on the right side, because now they're more aware of what they really need to do. And also I think the OpenChain activity is bringing us forward to this, because if I remember a few years ago, then we also talked to suppliers that we needed to explain what open source is and that they need to fulfill obligations, things like that. I think here we made a big step forward, and now their awareness is much higher. And the teams also ask sometimes, okay, how can they fulfill those non-functional requirements much more efficient. I think this is also something we didn't have in the past. Yeah. But you're right. We still have teams that have such a specific setup where we also say, okay, and potentially also they have a one-time delivery. Yeah. So then I would also check, okay, does it really make sense to invest all this onboarding on the automation on a central pipeline if the benefit is that low? So then in some cases it's sometimes still better to have an individual concept like in the left side, but that's what we try now with open source review toolkit, also to really offer a solution for everyone, so that no one has an excuse not to use it on the right side.
Oh, thanks. Has anyone used or has experience with using reproducible builds as an argument in security?
Yes, this is the premise for ORT, to have best engineering practice, so that we do not need to touch the builds themselves, but the ORT principle is that you directly go to the repo, use the sources, and that the ORT may be able to build based on the sources. So that's also some learning that some people didn't use best engineering practices, and then we tried to build it on our side to get the dependency tree and things like that, and then got stuck already in the beginning, and that was also not really helpful. We say we do an automation, and then it directly stops in the first step, because there were some private repositories that we couldn't access, or some stuff that was locally on the developer's machine. And I think this is a side effect, a very positive side effect, that the teams also learn, okay, how to do this. And say, okay, the first check is if technically you can onboard on this pipeline, because your software project builds reproducible. This is, I would say, the premise that we can run the right side.
Marcel, I would be curious, who's doing the cleanup on the right side. So can this teams still work independently while doing the cleanup of the metadata, or is here the requirement that there is a central team that takes care of that?
Both. We have two phases. So in the initial phase, we try to support, because you get a lot. Once you did this technical onboarding and it's running, then you get hundreds of false positives. And here we try to support with a central team and also collect this central correlations then in the metadata, so that in the second run, the next team will not have that many false positives then. And then once it really runs the CI/CD, then you only get few updates. So if you potentially then change one dependency, then you would get rather again a peak. Yeah, but then depending on the experience, then also from the teams, they could do it on their own. So we try to use Gits there also now that they can make a pull request. Okay, there's metadata curation, and but you need this central team that that runs the basics load. Yeah, otherwise it would be also a challenge.
Okay, thank you. So when you talk about the central pipeline, so this really means one odd run, not that the pipeline is finished as soon as you have finished your complete compliance process. The pipeline you're showing here means just one odd run. Then I have the results. I get back to the teams. They need to then double check if metadata and so on, everything is fine, and otherwise they need to do their cleanup and then start the pipeline again, right?
Exactly. So typically we have this nightly builds, where independent from the teams, our central pipeline runs nightly, gets the sources, checks them, sees if there are differences, and then feeds back either to us centrally or directly to the team. That's different. So that some teams they want to have this feedback. Other teams they're happy also with a weekly report or something like that, or with an email. So this depends on the teams.
Marcel, just the $1 million question. How big is the central team? What size? How many individuals?
The central teams that we have three main sections. The one is this curation team that works on this curation. This is about 4 people, more or less, at the moment, but we're merely starting up, and also I think with the known package managed technologies, we're on a nice side already, but now we're getting also more and more other technologies where we will have some peaks. And then we have the team that cares about infrastructure, about 4 people that care about the core. And then also additionally, we have developers working on this new features and close the gaps. And then third part is the consulting part, where we do internal consulting about, because now that you know the bill of materials, then you need, we have then the policies that check this. And depending on your context, the people also need some consulting, okay, how to implement then the obligations in their specific distribution context. So these are the 3 pillars that we have in our team. And here we also have 3 people, but this is primarily in the onboarding. So you need more effort in the onboarding once we have onboarded teams and it runs smoothly. And that also depends if you have teams that continuously develop on a service or something, then this is perfect. But if you have projects that is a single project for a limited time, then as I said in the beginning, then the question is is this the best setup, or would you rather go individual way and then you need more consulting and less automation?
Thanks.
So Marcel, one question. The curation team, you mean the metadata curations, which are, let's say, provided by the different teams? So like download URL or something like that of the used third-party artifacts, or do you mean
Yes.
with okay this? Yeah, we have we have a bit a different approach. We have at least not a real central team who cares or which cares about the entire curations of those metadata. We have in the several units, persons who have this clearing admin rights in Software 360, and they can change the data sets. So that's more decentralized way for the curation and maintenance of the data. Why we did this is we thought that establishing a central team might be a bottleneck somewhere. The downside is that you really need well-educated people in the units, yeah, who are really familiar with how to provide correct metadata. Otherwise, the data content in the catalog is not of that high quality.
And they need to have the same priority. I mean, each team must be aware of how important this is, or get the required time, because otherwise I think we can still see quite different results.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So this is what I forgot to mention, because I'm always focusing on the central stuff. Yes. So in the teams, we also have some bigger teams we call them open source partners or open source management representatives that exactly do what you said, Oliver, but not only the curation, but also they support in the onboarding and also serve as a central point of contact for all open source questions, so that we have kind of a bridge chat in the teams, so that we have an extra network internally, and they get a specific onboarding training on this whole infrastructure. Otherwise, I think it wouldn't work. So
yeah, I agree to you. Yeah.
Yeah, potentially it would work if you brief every single developer, but I think if they need to have this knowledge one day in a year, then they forget about this, and then we said, okay, we rather consolidate the task in one person covering several projects, so that we also have a specialist that may really profit from the training, rather than bothering everyone with details about curation and tooling and all this stuff. But this has also the danger that we had that a few years ago, that people just used the infrastructure, they clicked on the button and didn't even know why this FOSS compliance bundle was produced. And then we asked, and did you forward this to your customer? What? Why? And this brought us to the point. Okay, we do not talk about details with all our developers, but there we made a big emphasis on the awareness, so that they get the whole picture, that they know about open source, the licenses and all the stuff. So now I think we also therefore I emphasize also on this open source curriculum that was very, very helpful, so that this is not the Bosch specific or something, so that should be globally and important for everyone that works with open source, that they know what to do. And then once they have this awareness, they would raise the points on their own and ask for such support.
Marcel, sorry, just to get your bigger vision. So you are thinking of that maybe in some point in the future, we all, how to say, work with the same metadata. So that, for example, if we receive a delivery from Bosch, we will, of course, you will provide the required documentation, but in general, we can look up the last ord run in this metadata repository to get a picture of what's actually inside your delivery. What are you saying? I understood it that way, that it's not really required that now each and every one within the supply chain reruns those scans, or?
Yeah,
Okay.
that here we would need to look into detail because we have those two steps. The one is the identification that you have the bomb, yeah.
Mhm.
And the second part is that we have our internal policies and rules, yeah, that we will not share, to be honest, with our license classifications. So then you might have different license classifications and rules than we have, but at least the pure metadata that we provide to you via SPDX or something like that, you could inject either in the left side or in the right side, depending on your setup. And then if you use the same tooling than we do, then ORT would also, you would take our input, run ORT, then it would download all the sources, run all the scans again, run the evaluator and apply your policies. And then at least then you should set up on the same data, yes. And ideally, we would have even shared the metadata via a central metadata repository, like clearly defined or something else. Yeah.
Okay, thank
or
you.
even better in future that all projects are reuse conformant, so that all this information is directly in the software packages in themselves, so that we do not have to rely on any third-party location. Yeah. But that is, well, in a decade.
Yes, I think so. And hopefully I'm retired. I retired. I think I have to close the meeting. So it was a really interesting discussion, and I think we are not yet through. At least one final word. I think there is currently integration work ongoing with ORT and Software 360, but I'm not up to date regarding the state of this work. Might be a solution, or at least something we can build upon in future. Having said this, next meeting is in 2 weeks. And
or this afternoon.
Yeah, of course, of course. Sorry for that confusion. So of course the next meeting is in the afternoon at 6 p.m. German time, and then the other new meeting is in 14 days. So thank you very much, Marcel. Thank you all for this very interesting discussion. And hope to see you and hear you in the afternoon or in 14 days again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.